Hey guys, this is Desu, and this recap of Parry Everything Season 1. Nor was a young man living in a fantasy world who was pretty strong for his age and very well liked by everyone in the town. He worked a job requiring manual labor, but even his boss was impressed by his work and never said a word against him, as he was the best worker he had ever seen. One day, after taking his daily wage, he was about to head back when he suddenly heard the voice of a woman screaming for help coming from a nearby cave. He immediately rushed over, even after his boss told him not to as it could be dangerous. He ignored everyone's warnings and entered the cave, only to see a girl wrapped in magical barbed wire while an adventurous party faced off against a giant demonic bull. Ever since he was a child, Nor always had to take care of his mother and the household, because his father never came back. But he took it like a champ and started taking care of the house. His mom was sickly and mostly bedridden, so he made hot soup for her to drink while covered in soot and told her that he was going out to hunt some rabbits so she could have some protein for dinner. His mother cleaned his face while apologizing for not being able to give him anything in life, but Nor put on a brave face and told her he didn't need anything anyway. Later that night, he prepared a hearty rabbit stew for his mom, but when he came back to feed her, she had already passed away. Now, poor Nor had no one to call family in this world. He buried his mother outside the house but decided that he couldn't be weak and cry. He started living alone, tending to the garden, catching game, taking care of the farm animals, and studying inside his room after thoroughly cleaning it. He trained his body by catching wild fish, carrying heavy loads on the mountains, and eating lots of protein every day. One night, due to loneliness, he climbed on top of a chair and took out an old dusty storybook and started reading it. This took him way back as he remembered the time when his family was whole and his father would tell him tales about mighty adventurers who fought colossal dragons, learned magic from wizards, lifted curses in the haunted forest, and fought against an army of elves. These stories always fascinated him as his father would tell him that the duty of an adventurer is to protect the weak people and make sure they are never hurt. This gave him inspiration to do something with his life, and the next day, after tending to the animals, he got ready to leave his home and move towards the city to try and be an adventurer. He stayed in the forest at night with a campfire, and by the next morning, he arrived at the beautiful city of his kingdom. He entered the giant main gate and was completely blown away to see the number of people roaming around the markets, selling their goods and people buying swords and fruits at the same place. While walking, he noticed a man with a sword and decided to follow him, which led him to the Adventurers Guild. He entered the establishment to find a big burly man at the reception instead of a thick furry girl. Disappointed, he told the man that he was here to be an adventurer, but the man brushed him off, saying that this was no place for kids and that he should think about his parents. Nor replied that his parents were dead, which caught the man's attention, and he told him to drop by the training school first. Nor seemed confused, but the man told him that to join a guild he needed to pick a school, go through basic training, pick his class and skills, and only after graduating could he become an adventurer. Nor was happy for the information and excitedly headed over to a school with the aim to become the strongest swordsman. He enrolled and started training in the way of the sword, but even after several weeks, while every other student started awakening their magical potential, Nor still had no magical abilities. He kept practicing, and several months passed by, after which the instructor told him that he didn't have the talent and was wasting his time there. He was told to join a different school as he was definitely not fit to be a swordsman. Nor didn't give up and found another school, deciding to train as a warrior. He started training under a big fat redhead, but even after going through intense training for several months, the redhead told him that he didn't have the talent for it, as all he had learned was how to parry attacks. He then went through several different schools first as a hunter, but he got kicked out. Then he tried to become a thief but got rejected as he had no talent for it. He then tried to become a magician but failed even in that. So finally he decided to become a healer but failed and returned back disappointed. The man at the guild was shocked to learn that even after spending months at every school, Nor didn't learn a single thing and told him that, unfortunately, there was nothing he could do to become an adventurer.
たった一振りで山のように大きな竜。やったー！ウォリアー、冒険者っぽいぞ。
能力をわずかに上げることだけだ。すぐに命を落とすことになる。
ハンター。
天才の道具を扱うセンスが。
空箱の罠も解除でき。
やってもプチファイヤー一つとは。
クレリック。
擦り傷を癒す程度とは。
Disappointed in himself, Nor left the city and returned back to his cottage in the woods. But he decided that he was not going to admit defeat and created his own training setup with a sword. He decided to perfect the one move that he learned, which was to parry and deflect attacks aimed at him. He spent days perfecting it, day and night, and finally, after a year of rigorous training, he became strong enough to parry 10 attacks at once. He decided to keep training, and 3 years passed by, after which he managed to parry 100 swords at once but gained no new skills. He kept training endlessly to the point where his sword broke, 14 years passed by as he realized that in these past years, he had trained every single day and was now able to parry 1,000 swords at once without fail. Despite putting in this much hard work, he didn't gain any new skills but still decided to head over to the Adventurers Guild once more. This time he met a young girl who looked at his skill set only to advise him to visit the training school. Nor told her that he had already been through them, which surprised the girl as she told him that he didn't have any skills to make him an adventurer. Nor got disheartened once again when the man at the reception came out and barely recognized him. They sat down to talk over some beer when Nor told him about his training for the past years. The man told him that there are ranks in an adventurer from E to S, but even to become E rank, you need at least one skill, which Nor didn't have. Nor got sad, but the man told him that not many people knew, but there was another rank below E, which was F. There are some limitations for F-rank adventurers as they can't take kill quests or work in the forests. Outside the city they can only take odd manual labor jobs in the city, but no one would really want to do that. To his surprise, Nor immediately accepted and finally got his adventurer's license. He started doing odd jobs around the city like carrying heavy loads, finding lost cats, and kept training every single night. He also took nursing jobs and took care of old people by cooking for them. While doing all this, he kept training and seemed to be happy working as an adventurer who could actually help people. Finally, we come back to the present where the giant bull walked towards the adventurers and smashed the leader with his axe, sending him flying into the wall. Nor quickly checked him only to find out that he was dead. He looked back to see the other guys getting skewered by the bull, as it killed every single person in the area effortlessly before moving its eyes onto the white-haired girl. Nor's body immediately jumped into action as he threw a rock at the bull and diverted its attention before running away. The monster chased him with surprising quickness, and Nor realized that he couldn't run away, so he turned around and parried the bull's attack. To his surprise, the parry was so strong that the bull got blasted into the wall. It immediately recovered and jumped through the dust to attack Nor, but he was able to parry the attacks again and again as he realized that if he missed a single parry, he was as good as dead. He tried to find an opening but realized that he didn't have a single offensive skill to actually land an attack. His sword started chipping, but the demon turned towards the girl and rushed towards her. Nor immediately used his feather step ability, which increased his speed, to appear before the bull and deflect the attack once again at the cost of his own sword. He remembered his father telling him that an adventurer defends the weak even at the cost of his own life, so he stood his ground even with a broken sword. This time, when the monster attacked, Nor parried with all his might, which deflected the axe so much that it bounced back and chopped the head of the bull cleanly before getting stuck in the rocks. The girl was utterly shocked as blood splattered all around the area, but the magical barbed wire disappeared from her body. The girl immediately thanked him for saving her life and asked for his name, but Nor replied that his name wasn't worth remembering and walked back outside. He walked through the streets thinking about how he almost got killed by a giant cow and realized that he needed to train even more if he wanted to truly become an adventurer who could protect people. After Nor was gone, the dungeon gets filled with the white-haired woman's guards. As she turns out to be Lin Clay of a noble family, her personal guard arrives and watches the dead minotaur being inspected by the scientists, while Clay's guards lay dead on the ground covered by a white cloth. She immediately apologizes for not being here for her protection, but she tells him not to worry about it as it wasn't her fault. A little while later, another man named Dar enters and asks whether she is fine and details about what happened here. The news about the attack reaches her brother Ray, who is completely shocked to find out that his sister was attacked by such a monster. He asks Dar whether he has any idea what a minotaur was doing on the surface when it is supposed to stay in the innermost depths of the dungeons. Dar bows down and explains that this was definitely an assassination attempt, as they found out that the ring Lin recently bought from a merchant was tested by a magician, revealing that it had a mana stone of 90% purity, which is extremely rare. Ray still seems unclear as he doesn't understand why a minotaur would want a mana stone, but Dar reveals that he believes the mana stone was cursed by the neighboring enemy kingdom of Derry, who are known for practicing dark magic. Ray agrees with this assumption, as lately Derry's army has been harassing them on the outskirts, and now such a brazen attack on Lin without even trying to hide it proves that they want a war. Ray then asks Dar about the man who saved Lin's life, but Dar claims that they know nothing about the man apart from the fact that he killed the Minotaur with his broadsword in a matter of minutes but escaped quickly afterwards without even telling his name to Lin. The next morning, Nor goes into the guild as if nothing happened, when Fatty immediately walks up to him asking if he is fine. Nor seems confused, so Fatty explains that last night a deadly monster emerged in the caves near his construction site, which is why he was worried. Nor has no idea that Fatty is talking about the Minotaur that he killed last night, as he thought it must be a low-level cow monster since he managed to defeat it. Fatty tells Nor that he is lucky that he left beforehand, because even a former ranked adventurer like him couldn't have done anything against such a strong beast. Nor wipes the dirt from his face and wonders what kind of monster could it be that even a ranked adventurer is scared of it, and then thanks the gods that he only faced off against a giant cow. Noor asks what happened to the monster, and Fatty replies that some mystery man ended up killing the beast in a single blow, which really shocks Noor as he wonders how strong that man must be to kill such a monster, not realizing that he is the man Fatty is talking about. Later, Fatty gives him his pay for the day, but tells him to get a real job as well, otherwise he won't be able to earn much. Before he could reply though, a hooded figure appears behind him and calls him out. Noor turns around only to find the white-haired girl he saved yesterday and asks how did she find him. She apologizes for following him, but claims that she used her long-distance detection skill to find him.
それでその魔物はどうなったんだいでなそうかほらよ昨日の畑まだまともな仕事なノールまともな俺はもう3割増しぐらいで稼げてる
見つけましたやっとかとは思ったのですが基本とするのは本来マジ程度のものです
そんなことはないだろ
He asks whether she learned it from the thief schools, but she claims that she is from the magician branch but has equal skills in all the 6 branches. Lin notices that she is drawing way too much attention and asks Noor whether they can talk somewhere more private, but before he could reply, Fatty grabs him and asks what the hell did he do. Noor replies that he didn't do anything wrong while Lin deploys a soundproof barrier and asks him to come with her. They both exit the building and walk through the streets to a desolate area where she tells him that she really wanted to thank him, as not only did he save her life, but he also saved the lives of a lot of citizens. Noor still doesn't know how strong he is, so he claims that she is so talented and he must have ruined her plans by butting his head in between. She tells him that it's not true, in fact, if he didn't come to her aid, she would have probably died there. She then claims that she wants to reward him for his help, but Noor immediately replies that her gratitude is enough. Lin, however, is not so easily pushed away, and she tells him that she is a person of status here, and even her father would like to thank him personally. He, again, refuses, which shocks Lin, who has no idea why a man would refuse a reward from a noble. She asks whether there is anything troubling him and even claims that her father will give him a lot of land if he wants it, but Noor keeps rejecting her offers. He tells her that he doesn't need anything from her, which makes her tear up as she feels obligated to repay him for his help. She tells him that she won't move from this place till he accepts her gratitude, which reminds him of the time when he did the same to one of the instructors of the healing school branch. He finally gives in and agrees to meet with her father but refuses to take any over-the-top rewards. This makes her happy enough and she uses magic to conceal both herself and him as they walk through the city back to her mansion. When they finally reach her house, Noor is completely shocked as he has never seen such a big and lavish place. They walk by the guards and enter inside, while Noor wonders whether this girl is a noble if she is so rich.
でかいな
少し一般的な作りではますが中へどうぞといえばまだお名前をクレイスと申します
On the way, they end up running into her personal guard, Inai, who looks at him suspiciously and asks who he is. Lin tells her that this is the man who saved her life, and she immediately softens up, claiming that she will take them to the Lord. They follow Inai through the gallery when Noor spots a guy wearing yellow armor waiting by the window. He immediately jumps into action, spinning his lance before pointing it towards Noor, asking who the hell he is. Annie tells him to back off as he is Lin's guest. But this Pikachu-looking guy ends up making fun of Noor for looking poor. Annie introduces him as Gil and asks him to accompany them into the room, as she still doesn't fully trust Noor. They wait outside the hall as Lin's father, Clay, was talking to his son about the chances of war increasing, as they remember the last time they met with the King of Derry, who ended up insulting them and threatened to wage war against them if they didn't give them access to all the dungeons in their kingdom. Soon the door opens, and they all enter the hall. Both Inai and Gil drop to one knee in front of their lord, but Noor has no clue who the man on the high seat is, so he simply walks ahead without a care, alongside Lin. She introduces him to her father, claiming that this is the man who saved her life, and immediately the lord gets up from his seat and moves towards Noor, thanking him for saving the life of his girl. Noor tells him that he is not a noble and has never talked to nobles before, so he doesn't know how to properly behave, but the Lord doesn't seem to mind as he laughs and shakes his hand before asking him to choose anything that he wants for a reward. Noor immediately declines, claiming that he neither wants land nor gold. The Lord seems confused but tells him that if he wants, he can have half the treasure of the oldest dungeons in the world that fall in their kingdom. Ray advises against it, as the treasure is worth more than a small country's GDP, but to their surprise, Noor refuses it as well, claiming that he doesn't want any kind of gift from them. The Lord looks confused as to what sort of man would refuse such a gift. He then walks over to his seat and takes out the giant black sword behind it, which used to be his personal weapon during his adventuring days. Ray seems a bit worried, but his father tells him that it's fine, as the sword should be used in battle and not kept as a decoration. He hands it over to Noor, who grabs the handle and immediately realizes that the weapon is heavier than anything that he has ever used. Nor thinks that it is just a random secondhand sword, so he decides to accept it as a gift, as he wanted all of this to end quickly so he could go back to work. The Lord asks him to swing it once, and to his surprise, Nor simply uses one hand to swing the sword so strongly that it creates a wind blast around them. Nor looks at the Lord and tells him that it's a bit heavy but he will manage, which makes Clay laugh, as he can't believe this man just swung a two-handed greatsword with a single hand. Clay asks whether he would like to train Lin a little bit, as it is getting very dangerous nowadays, which puts a smile on the girl's face, but Nor immediately declines, claiming that there is nothing he could teach her, and decides to leave. On the way through their gallery, he looks at the sword once again and realizes that it is the same size as the drainage ditch, which means that he can use it to scoop out dirt from the ditch much more efficiently. Gil leads Nor through a hallway, and Nor wonders where he is being taken because he just wants to go back to work. To his surprise, Gil brings him to a training arena for a mock duel between them. This shocks Nor because he has not sparred hard with anyone since his days in training school. Gil picks up a wooden pole for practice and reveals that he is quite famous in the capital. Then he asks Nor to choose his weapon as well. Nor thinks this is an excellent chance to learn from a veteran and chooses a regular wooden sword. He doesn't think he will be much of an opponent to Gil, but is still planning to give it his all. Gil attacks first, thrusting his staff at Nor, who easily dodges his attacks. Nor can see how effortless and efficient Gil's moves are, revealing how much he has trained, but for some reason Gil appears to be moving very slowly to Nor. He believes that Gil is just holding back his strength out of consideration for a newbie like him. Nor calls a timeout and tells Gil that he doesn't need to hold back so much. Gil decides to get serious and launches his attacks with much higher intensity this time. However, Nor is able to find openings in Gil's defense every time he misses an attack. On the other hand, Gil is frustrated that his strikes are not connecting with Nor. So, Gil decides to use a flex attack, changing his trajectory at the last moment, forcing Nor to jump. He uses this chance to strike, but Nor dodges the attack despite its destructive potential. Nor asks Gil to increase the pace even more, indicating he is comfortable with the current intensity. Gil was already using his full abilities, so hearing those words hurts his ego. Nor realizes he might actually be stronger than Gil, but he suddenly finds himself on the receiving end of Gil's special move. The attack is dangerously close, but Nor manages to dodge it. After seeing the destructive power of Gil's attack, Nor declares he no longer wishes to fight and leaves the palace.
そいつは悪かったな。だがそれよりさっきより格段に速いに無防備になっている。どうだ。
However, his skill causes an uproar among other knights who can't believe he could dodge their captain's special attack. Some speculate that Nor survived only because Gil was using a practice spear, otherwise, a genius like Gil could easily defeat anyone. Hearing these words takes the depressed Gil down memory lane. He was always talented with a spear and traveled all around the kingdom seeking powerful opponents. No one could give him a proper challenge, and Gil got bored. He joined the knights in the capital to fight monsters, but even they were no match for his strength and skill. His boredom persisted until one day, the master of the sword school visited him. The master, who trained Gil in his early days, listened to Gil's frustrations. Gil expressed how boring it was to be so strong and wished for stronger opponents. The master only told him that someday a student who surpasses him will emerge. Gil hoped this person would appear while he was still alive to relieve his boredom. Now, Gil thinks about Nor, who surprised him during their duel. Initially unimpressed by Nor's apparent strength, Gil realized during their spar that Nor was much stronger than he looked. When Nor asked Gil to go faster, Gil used his special attack, faster than the speed of sound. Despite knowing no human could survive it, Nor dodged the attack, leaving Gil feeling defeated. Gil believes Nor ended the fight to spare his embarrassment in front of the troops. Before leaving, Nor mentioned looking forward to their next meeting, which Gil interprets as a challenge to get stronger. Nor, however, remains unaware of how highly Gil rates him. He used his skills to evade Gil's ultimate attack and realizes Gil adjusted the speed deliberately. Nor is grateful to Gil for showing him he still needs training. The next day, Nor cleans drains with the treasured sword from the king. He's stunned by its performance. Later, sitting in the forest after the construction site was suspended due to the Minotaur incident, he wonders how to pass the time and use the sword. He lacks resources for other businesses and finds his fire magic too weak for barbecues. Nor hears footsteps and finds Lin, who seeks him out. She asks to be his apprentice, eager to learn from him while serving him. Nor refuses, saying he cannot teach her anything and is self-sufficient. Lin offers monetary rewards, but Nor declines. Lin insists, demonstrating her magic prowess with icicle lances and powerful fire spells. She cuts down a tree with a dagger and blasts a tree behind, Nor with a magic sword skill. Lin believes Nor will accept her as an apprentice after this display, but he still refuses. He realizes Lin overestimates him and wants to show her he is not as skilled as she thinks. Nor creates a tiny fireball to demonstrate his loser skill. Lin is shocked. Recalling tales of a talentless boy, she realizes Nor's ability surpasses the strongest magicians in the world. She concludes he is a peerless master in other branches too. Ashamed of her pride in her recent skills, Lin sees Nor as someone who doesn't boast and helps others with even mundane tasks. As a future princess, Lin believes she must learn from Nor to lead the kingdom alongside her brother. She reaches out to Nor again after dinner, asking him to be her master. Troubled, Nor just wants to go home. Meanwhile, Lin's elder brother Ray is in his office, wondering why his father chose to give away the legendary black sword to a complete stranger. He recalls how his father ventured into the dungeon in his youth, along with the masters of the 6 job schools. After a very long exploration, he obtained the black blade, which was instantly regarded as their most valuable artifact. It was made with an unknown metal that was harder than anything else they knew about. It was practically indestructible, with neither physical attacks nor magic managing to scratch it. However, everyone wondered how such a powerful sword could be in such a terrible condition. Ray believes that the value of the black blade far surpasses any treasure they have, and it is not something his father would give to a man he did not see something special in. He knows that his dad can sense the dangers that are starting to envelop their kingdom and probably entrusted the sword to Nor to say that he is pinning all the hope to save the kingdom on his shoulders. Even Ray believes that Nor is not an ordinary person, and when the time comes, he will become their trump card. At the same time, Nor is in the city eating a delicious meal from a roadside stall with Lin by his side. She has completely gotten into the role of his apprentice, and he wants to tell her that he is not worth being her teacher. He thinks that if they head to the guild, she will see how pathetic he is and stop following him around. Once they reach the guild, the fatty immediately questions Nor about why he is with a princess. Nor says that it is complicated, so Fatty decides to let them have their privacy, even though Nor badly wants some advice from him. Fatty then asks them what they want, and Nor says that they would like a commission for 2 people since Lin is a B-rank adventurer. Fatty says that if she joins a party with Nor, they can go outside the city to hunt goblins. Nor is flabbergasted on hearing this because he has only heard stories about how real adventurers use goblins as their practice dummies. He can't believe that the day he finally does the same has come. But then he realizes that he is taking advantage of Lin's high rank. Even though he wanted her to leave him alone just now, Nor finds Lin staring at him, so he feels terrible and thinks that she has seen how greedy and shameless he is. She asks him if anything is wrong, and he asks if she is fine with this arrangement because he is relying on her rank. Lin has no problem with that and tells Nor that he is free to use anything that belongs to her. Nor feels a little pathetic, but he doesn't care because he can live out his dream. Finally, he marches out of the guild with determination, but then Fatty calls him back because he doesn't even know where the goblins are. Fatty completes the paperwork and then tells Nor not to push his luck because even if goblins are low-level monsters, they can still be dangerous. He points out their location on the map and remarks that lately their numbers have decreased. He asks Nor to collect goblin ears for his reward and then sends him off. Nor and Lin enter the Forest of Beasts, and Nor is surprised because he has never seen this part of the forest before. He tells Lin about how the trees are different in the south, where he comes from, and she gives him a brief lecture about the ecosystem. Nor then asks her about goblins, and Lin says that they are small monsters who prey on fruits and small creatures, but their numbers increase quite rapidly. If the numbers increase beyond a limit, the forest can no longer supply them with fruit, so they attack human settlements. That is why the Adventurer Guild sends people to keep their numbers on the low side but forbids them from being wiped out, because goblins are beneficial for the ecosystem too. Nor is impressed by Lin's knowledge and thinks that he has even less he can teach her. They keep walking towards the denser parts of the forest, but even with her detection skills, Lin cannot find any trace of goblins. However, she senses something at a distance and tells Nor that they should check it out.
実際にこの森もと言われているので、
なるほど、幅広い知識も持っているのか。
そのため定期的に冒険者が飼って森で木の実や小動物を捕食。体が少し違うんです。
そうなのか。リン。
やはりいませんね。
The deeper they go into the forest, the darker it becomes, and the mist surrounding them also begins to thicken. Once they reach the spot where Lin had sensed the monster, they find nothing. She remarks that the presence of the monster simply vanished, but Nor senses something unusual in the rustling of the leaves. He looks ahead and finds the half-eaten body of a goblin floating in the air, and it suddenly falls to the ground. Lin immediately uses a spell to uncover whoever is behind it, and a huge green monster with a red crystal on its forehead becomes visible. Nor is shocked and asks who this cousin of the Incredible Hulk is. She tries telling him that it is a goblin emperor, however, she stutters, and Nor only hears that the monster is a goblin. He freaks out, thinking that this is the normal size of a goblin, and if real adventurers can use them as practice material, they must be really amazing. The goblin emperor uproots trees with his bare hands and roars loudly, terrifying Lin. She knows that even a goblin king is a calamity-class monster that is not easy to deal with, and the goblin emperor is leagues stronger than it. She knows that the goblin emperor is not a natural monster but an artificial one created through taboo experiments. She is terrified of it, and Nor thinks that even though she is powerful, she must never have fought monsters before. He tells her not to worry about anything because their opponent is just a goblin. His words give her courage, and she thinks that maybe Nor predicted that a monster of this level was already here, which is why he was so excited to come here. She takes her stance next to him, certain that she can defeat the goblin emperor alongside her teacher. The goblin emperor charges at them with a tree trunk in each arm. Nor blocks his first attack and parries it, and manages to parry the second attack too. After that, the goblin emperor tries to push him into a corner with brute force, but Nor still overwhelms it with a parry. This disbalances the goblin, and Lin tries hitting it with wind and ice magic, but the goblin is remarkably agile and dodges all her attacks. The goblin emperor yeets a tree towards her, but Nor parries it. He asks Lin if she is fine, and she tells him to keep his attention on the goblin, who is throwing more trees towards him. Nor continues to parry them, but he's getting tired now. Lin notices that whatever little injuries the goblin emperor is receiving are healing unnaturally fast, and she believes that the red mana stone on its forehead is the reason behind that. Suddenly, the goblin emperor throws 3 trees towards Nor at once, and he panics because he won't be able to parry all of them at once. Luckily, Lin comes in clutch with a powerful wind magic that blows away all the trees. Her attack damages the goblin, but it heals from the injuries instantly.
額の魔石あれを取り除けばなんとか
まさか俺が弾けるか守りきれないでいたのかはい
ウィンドブラスター
Now, Lin is certain that they need to get the mana stone out of its head to defeat it, but Nor doesn't think they can manage to do that. Suddenly, he gets an idea and asks Lin to shoot the powerful wind magic from earlier at his back. She warns him that the spell is powerful enough to tear castle walls, but Nor plans to take the blow using his black blade so that he can accelerate towards the goblin emperor faster than it can react. Lin agrees and shoots his back with a powerful wind blast. Nor is sent speeding ahead, and despite using the physical enhancement skill, he still breaks a bone. He dodges the tree thrown at him by the goblin and then quickly heals himself before jumping high up to deliver the finishing blow. The goblin emperor tries attacking him with a tree, but Nor's powerful strike cuts through the tree and hits the mana stone on the goblin's head. The mana stone pops out of its socket, and the goblin screeches in pain as Nor is sent rolling on the ground. He gets up and sees the goblin writhing in pain, and then Lin comes to him with the mana stone she has safely retrieved. Nor then asks her if she can deal with the goblin by herself now, and she accepts his request. He doesn't feel good seeing the suffering monster, so he asks Lin to make it as peaceful as possible. She affirms and then, ironically, proceeds to burn the goblin emperor to death. Nor pays the monster his sympathies, and then thinks that he has had enough of goblin hunting for a while. He thinks that he is still too weak to even face fodder-level monsters, so he should train harder before coming to the forest again. Later, the secret agents serving Ray bring the mana stone to him and report about the goblin emperor case. Just by seeing the purity and size of the mana stone, Ray knows that it is the work of the Magic Empire. He also learns that Lin and Nor managed to defeat the enormously powerful monster with just a few scratches. However, what shocks him the most is how a huge monster like that could be brought into their kingdom without their guards and Secret Service noticing it. He asks his agents to look out for such irregularities across the nearby cities and dismisses them. At the same time, Nor and Lin are reporting to Fatty at the guild, who asks Nor how he feels after his first monster hunt. Nor is still holding fast to the belief that he just fought a normal goblin, so he tells Fatty that it was harder than he thought it would be, and they only won thanks to Lin. She becomes a fan of his modesty, and Fatty also thinks that Nor just watched from behind while the princess fought the goblin. He gets a bit suspicious on hearing about the red mana stone on its forehead, and asks if it was really a goblin. Nor turns to Lin for confirmation, and she replies that since her teacher called it a goblin, it was just that and nothing more. Fatty is content with thinking that it was a rare monster, and then asks them to hand over the proof of their kill. Nor and Lin suddenly realize that they forgot to collect the goblin's ear before burning it whole. Soon after that, Ray gets reports of odd things happening in nearby cities and villages. In some places, people are hearing strange sounds at night and animals are cowering in fear as they return from the forest. Meanwhile, in other places, the number of disappearing pets is increasing as the forests nearby have suddenly become more silent. Ray believes that this could be the sign of unnatural monsters who have snuck into their kingdom. He immediately orders his men to send search parties to each of the locations and put everyone with detection spells at work. He also orders them to summon the 6 masters of each school because they may need their help. Once his subordinates are gone, Ray shows his frustration as he throws the papers in the air, wondering if the Magic Empire really wants their dungeons so badly that it is going to such lengths. On the other hand, Nor and Lin are enjoying some street food with their reward money. Ultimately, Fatty gave them the money for slaying one goblin without proof out of his pocket, because it was Nor's first conquest mission. After they are done eating, Lin tells Nor that she will be heading home now, and he is relieved that he is finally going to get some peace. Just then, Ray arrives looking for his sister. Upon seeing Nor, he immediately makes a request asking him to visit a town in the mountains the next morning. He says that Lin will also join him, and he will make all the arrangements as well as pay him a good fee. Ray doesn't reveal the exact business he has in that town, but Nor accepts it because he seems earnest. The next day, Nor rides the carriage that will take them to their destination. Riding a carriage for the first time in his life was the main reason Nor accepted Ray's quest, and he enjoys every moment of it. On the other hand, Lin appears quite gloomy, and he asks her if she is not interested in the beautiful scenery outside. His attention goes back outside, and he thinks that once he becomes a proper adventurer, he will leave the city to travel. Lin suddenly apologizes for her brother pulling him into this, but he tells her that it is fine because he is getting paid for it. This spoils Lin's mood even further. This morning, Ray had explained that their mission was to go into the town of Tauros on the other side of the mountain, and if nothing happened after staying there for a while, they should head to their neighboring country, the Holy Kingdom of Mithra. He told Nor that as long as nothing happens, he can consider it a paid vacation. Now, as Lin thinks about that, she wishes that nothing really happens. Her bodyguard, Eanes, tells her that she doesn't need to worry about anything because she is here to protect her. The truth is, Ray gave her a top-secret mission before going. He said that their kingdom is going to face a great danger soon, and if it falls, Eanes should take Lin and seek shelter in the country of Mithra. Eanes was shocked and asked if Lin knew about this, and Ray revealed that he had not told her anything because she would surely oppose it. He was really concerned about Lin's safety, and told Eanes that she was the only one he could trust with that.
これから王都は、もし王都壊滅の方が届いたら、
密命を受けている。
リンを連れ、その時は亡命せよ。言っていない。
リンネブルグ様にこのことは、しかし、有事の際には、
あいつを安全な場所まで送り届けてくれ。
承知しました。
Back to the present, the group is taking a break, and Eanes apologizes to Nor for dragging him into this. She promises to keep him safe, but he tells her that there is no need for it, because he is good at running away. Eanes insists, saying that there will be no need to run because she has her shield with her. Nor says that he can't see anything, so Eanes decides to show her abilities to him. She creates a holy shield with her special ability and tells Nor that if anything happens, he should hide behind the shield. He is impressed, and then recalls how Lin was saying that Eanes is on the same level as the spear user, Gil, he fought. He has heard that Gil is strong enough to defeat a dragon, and if Eanes is on the same level as him, Nor thinks that they are too strong compared to someone like him who struggled fighting a mere goblin. He thanks Eanes, saying that she is really talented, but those words remind her of her childhood. She lived in an orphanage, and one day she suddenly activated her power. Her friend was curious about it and tried touching it, only to get her finger cut. The caretakers called the principal, and soon the magician, the redhead warrior, and the priest came to the orphanage as well. They asked Eanes to show her abilities, and the magician declared that it was a gift from heaven, which only the rarest people can receive. He told the young Eanes that her power could be a blade that could cut through anything or a shield that could block any attack, depending on how she used it. Eanes was bothered by these heavy words, but the redhead warrior told her that he would train her to use her power correctly. He took her in as a student, and while he trained her ability with him, she kept distancing herself from everyone in the orphanage out of fear of hurting them. However, that was only until she met Nor and learned his name. She had heard that name a lot from the redhead warrior, who was her master as well as adoptive father. One day, as they were hunting monsters in the forest, another warrior told the redhead that a huge group of monsters was approaching them. The redhead was lost in thought and mumbled that he wished Nor was here at times like this. Eanes was curious to know about the person her father acknowledged, but more than that, she was jealous of him. Ever since she met Nor, her jealousy has gotten worse, and she wants to shake that feeling off so that she can protect Lin without any weakness. Just then, Nor notices something moving through the wheat fields and leaving a strange trail. As soon as Lin hears this, she asks the carriage to be stopped. She uses her magic to reveal whatever is hiding in the field, and it turns out to be a huge frog-bat hybrid monster. At the same time, numerous monsters attack the capital at once. Ray commands to deploy the warriors, swordsmen, and hunters to hunt as many as they can, while the thieves are to help the civilians evacuate. King Clay recalls the words of Emperor Derry, who told him that they would regret not accepting his conditions. He believes that Derry is behind this attack, and Rai agrees. He believes that this might just be the start and they should get ready for much worse attacks. Clay asks him about the 6 masters, and Ray replies that all of them are already deployed to face powerful monsters. Meanwhile, the redhead warrior and his troops face 3 goblin emperors in the forest. The swordmaster hunts down lizard monsters in the city, and the hunters, magicians, healers, and thieves are also at work. But the king fears that they have spread them out too thin. On the other hand, just as Lin uncovers the concealment spell on the black dragon, it attacks the girl in front of him. Lin and Eanes recognize the monster as the Black Death Dragon, which is incredibly dangerous. But Nor charges towards it without wasting a moment to protect the girl. He parries the dragon strikes with his black blade, and Eanes remarks that the girl also appeared out of nowhere. Just as Lin broke the concealment spell around the dragon, she knows that it can only mean one thing: the girl is definitely a demon with the power to control monsters. Her brother had once told her about demons who look like humans, but their powers and nature are closer to monsters. He told her that demons are a vile race who destroyed an entire kingdom once, and because of that, humans hunted them down. Their descendants still live on, and Ray was certain that they must hold deep grudges against humans. Back to the present, Isekai believes that the girl is definitely a demon who brought the dragon to the city. When Lin used her spell, it must have caught the girl by surprise. And when her control over the dragon was weakened just for a second, it attacked her. Isekai believes that they should not save someone like her, but Nor rushed to help her even without thinking about it. As she sees him still fighting against the dragon, she wonders what he is thinking. Lin says that, in any case, they need to help Nor, but Isekai stops her, saying that it is already too late for him. Nor thinks that the dragon is quite slow and weak, compared to the goblin he fought. He thinks that if he just buys time, Lin will help him out. Suddenly, the dragon shoots its breath at him, and Nor decides to parry it because the girl will get hit if he dodges. However, that was the worst mistake he could make, as the attack explodes, releasing a very powerful poison into the air. Nor immediately starts vomiting black blood, and bloody tears start flowing from his eyes. He realizes that he was just hit by an incredibly deadly poison, and it seems too late because he has started to lose consciousness. He falls to the ground, and Lin tries to reach him, but Isekai blocks her way with a barrier, saying that she will only get herself killed if she goes near the Black Death Dragon. She creates a barrier by combining her shields, hoping to keep Lin safe until she gets to safety. Lin requests her to let her help Nor, but Isekai refuses because her greatest priority is to protect the princess. The dragon suddenly launches another round of poison breath, and Isekai immediately adds more shields to her barrier. She tells the princess to focus solely on her survival, but Lin still uses her purification magic and hopes to save Nor. Her magic is not strong enough to do that, and as the black poison covers everything, Isekai apologizes to Nor that she could not save him. Suddenly, a part of the black dragon's claw hits her barrier, and the poison cloud disappears. Nor is fighting against the dragon despite being severely poisoned. Seeing him like this, Isekai realizes why the redhead warrior wanted Nor's help in troubling situations. She thinks that he is the ultimate shield who will protect people even at the cost of his life, but she fears that he is not going to make it out alive. Meanwhile, Nor keeps on parrying the dragon's attacks and counters its poison breath as well. He gives the dragon an opening to attack him, and he blocks the attack, but that is all he can do before falling to the ground. He puts his hand to his face, and after seeing traces of poisoned blood there, he thinks that he will somehow manage things this time. Some time ago, in a prison in another kingdom far away, children were kept as prisoners for being considered cursed, because they possessed the power to control magical beasts since birth. When the guard threw food scraps into the cell, the children rushed to eat what they could, like rats. In past decades, the first people infected with this curse used their powers only to control livestock and increase production in the fields. However, this gift soon began to be used for war extermination, leading society to mark the demons negatively. Outside the cell, the guard watched the children eat like animals until he decided to enter and punish one of the boys for looking at him with a face he hated. This treatment was not new, it was part of the boy's daily routine. On this day, just for asking why he was being beaten, one boy received such a severe beating that he was almost unrecognizable. To make matters worse, he spent 3 days with only water to drink and nothing to eat. Due to this unwanted gift, the child began to read other people's minds, but no skill could free him from his degrading situation. In fact, upon discovering the boy's new talent, they treated him with even more violence. At night, he remembered all the times he was treated with contempt by society and couldn't shake off those intrusive thoughts, further traumatizing him. Interestingly, he never reacted to this mistreatment or even thought of reacting. Even though he hated being beaten almost daily, deep down he didn't want to hurt anyone or see more blood than he already saw in his daily routine. However, one day a man appeared, wanting to use the demon folk's domination powers to help a certain nation in war. Knowing that the child had never known what it meant to be respected and valued, the man said it was the greatest honor to help society with his abilities while bringing monsters that needed to be tamed for battle. Eager to be useful, the boy was surprised to discover that he could finally help someone, something that was previously unthinkable. The man went further, promising that the boy would never be beaten again if he did as he was told and would have access to delicious meals he had never had before. This was not limited to this specific child, but also extended to all his friends in their dirty, rotten cells. It was soon revealed that this man was the same one who had beaten the boy so much in prison. Now, being more honest with his speech, he stated that if the boy refused the agreement, his situation would worsen even more in the cell. Using a magical device to prevent his mind from being read, the man felt confident that he could gain the demon's support for his selfish purposes. Even though he couldn't know what the man was actually thinking, the child knew one thing for sure: he never broke his promises, even if they involved the worst fate he could offer the demon folk through his brutal beatings. As it stands, we already know the outcome of this conversation. The confidence that the man would keep his promise made the boy resolve to kill his targets at any cost. However, the seal was broken by travelers who crossed his path, causing the demon folk to lose control of his magical beast and be attacked by it. This event put enormous pressure on the boy because he imagined that his friends would continue to suffer because of his failure in this mission. At the same time, seeing the creature approaching him gave him an inevitable feeling that his death was near, which he saw as a good thing since he considered himself useless and incapable of helping anyone. In fact, he was happy to die, hoping that in the next life he would not be as despised as in this one. Maybe he would even get a chance to eat something delicious.
ちゃんと殺さなきゃ。シールが。どうしよう。ごめんなさい。死ねるんだ。何の役にも立てなかったけど、ここで死ねて殴られませんように、誰かの役に立てますように。それから一度でいいから。
However, as he closed his eyes, waiting for his end, the demon folk opened his eyelids again to check the sound of a sword in front of him. It was an unknown man using his Parry ability to confront the black dragon of death. The folk didn't understand why someone was protecting him. Even when the dragon released its toxin into the air, the warrior made sure to extend his healing to the child, saving him from death by the spreading poison. But after an intense battle against such a powerful creature, the man finally lost his strength and fell to the ground. Exhausted, the poison was already taking over his body and making it difficult to breathe. But when he saw his grayish blood on his hands, Nor felt relieved for some reason. As a child, Nor had once gone to collect ingredients on the mountain after returning from training at his school in the royal capital. He celebrated having filled his bucket with food, but it was no accident that he collected so much, lacking knowledge about vegetation and its properties. He wasn't used to bringing home new ingredients that could be included in his diet. On that day, he ended up ingesting a highly poisonous plant. He crawled all night until he reached a water source to wet his head, not knowing what to do. He sought answers on how to heal himself in the books at home until he found the plant he had ingested in one of them. Its name was Dragon's Ruin, and his mother had always said he should never eat that plant. The young man tried to keep up his training while practicing his light healing ability to avoid dying over time. He felt he was gradually improving since he no longer felt pain. When he returned beyond the mountain and encountered Dragon's Ruin again, he was more cautious, but not enough to avoid being bitten by a snake called Poison Thorn. After punching the creature in the face, the child fainted again but woke up shortly afterward without feeling unwell. To get revenge on the snake, he took it home to fry, and the animal's venom was just a spiced oil entering his diet. The next day, he caught another venomous thorn and let it bite his arm, noting that the venom spread more slowly than the day before. With this, Nor began to develop a special taste for poisonous things, imagining that tolerance to this substance would finally be the new ability he longed for in addition to his usual parry. Just like the day he went back to eating Dragon's Ruin to test his capacity, the boy remained steadfast in his goal in the end. Even though he didn't exactly gain a new ability, he could now eat poisonous things at the cost of vomiting very little blood. Maybe that's why Nor got up after being intoxicated by the dragon with such a savory taste in his mouth before taking the monster's fatal blow. The human saved his life and blew part of the venom out of his nose like Moxie. Behind him, the child seemed to be recovering with the healing he had left active. Nor refocused on his opponent using Parry to stay in the fight. However, noticing that the man was starting to gain some advantage, the dragon began to inhale an absurd amount of air into its lungs. Nor believed that the monster was going all out. To prevent the worst from happening, he used Parry before the winged frog could spit out whatever it had accumulated inside. As a result, the monster exploded like a balloon.
すごい。あんなに恐ろしい魔物。
でかい生死を閉じた一撃。
In front of the dead monster, Nor wondered how such a dangerous animal could be roaming these parts and got the answer from the child he had saved. She confessed that her mission was to take that creature to the city, and having no idea it was a demon folk, Nor imagined that this child had brought the frog to eat, just as he would have, or had raised the beast as a pet. Therefore, Nor apologized for killing the child's food or friend and promised to make amends, but the boy refused any form of payment and explained that he could control magical beasts. Surprised, Nor asked if anyone else had this ability, and the child became frightened upon hearing the word ability because his gift had always been seen as a curse wherever he went. Discovering that more people like this boy were born with this power, Nor interpreted it as a gift from the heavens, contrary to what the boy had heard about it until then. Also discovering that the child was a demon folk, Nor knew there was a tribe of demon folk where everyone could control creatures. This made him remember that he had often imagined what he would do if he had this ability. He would certainly have the land animals take up hoses and help in the fields while the aerial ones would serve as carrier pigeons. Noting the man's tranquility, the demon folk asked if Nor was not afraid of him or did not hate him, but Nor didn't understand these questions after all. The boy's ability was extremely useful and should not be underestimated. Hearing this, the boy couldn't contain his emotion because feeling useful was really his weak point. Nor analyzed that this child was the opposite of him, since he, Nor, had fought incessantly to develop a single ability while the demon folk was born with such a powerful innate talent. Curiously, this hadn't made the child confident, quite the opposite. Nor didn't understand why anyway. He patted the boy's head and assured him that his power was extremely useful. At that moment, Lin and Denise arrived to see how the man was. They suggested seeking treatment as soon as possible, but he assured them he would be fine despite being poisoned. Lin saw that the miasma exhaled by the frog was so terrible it killed the weed it passed over, so she could hardly believe that Nor had not only survived ingesting this substance but had also returned to fight and defeated the Black Death Dragon. The only explanation she had was that one day she had heard from the Sovereign of Salvation about the Holy Spirit. When the cleric molded his body and mind, like a true saint, this technique began to purify everything it touched and healed all wounds. This is the perfection achieved after 40 years dedicated to eccentric training, but Nor seemed to have reached this level at a young age. At this point, the warrior asked that the child be treated by Lin, and the girl noticed that the boy had pale skin with silver hair mixed with light blue. Along with deep and dark eyes. Putting the pieces together, she understood that the boy was a demon folk. Knowing all the weight that came behind this certainty, she asked Nor what he intended to do with this child. He replied that he intended to take him with the group in the carriage. But Innes tested and Lin remained silent. Because she had studied the history of this demon folk and read terrible things about them, Nor explained that he owed the boy for disrupting his work of taking the frog to the city, so the two women in the group panicked with this information. Speaking of which, Nor asked who had ordered the boy to do this, but even he didn't know for sure. Analyzing the child's gaze and race, he was certain he was a slave from another kingdom, as slavery was banned in Clay. When the boy revealed he had nowhere to go, Nor reiterated that he would at least like to take him to the nearest city. Lin remembered her father had taught her to trust her own eyes instead of being swayed by rumors, and this embarrassed the noblewoman for so easily succumbing to the prejudices against demon folk instead of verifying for herself that this child was truly innocent. Soon, Nor asked the demon folk's name, and he finally revealed it to be Rollo. Despite Lin and Nor commotion, Innes reminded them that the carriage's destination was the sacred theocracy of Mithra, where the boy's race was forbidden. In other words, if they took Rollo with them in the carriage, they might become enemies of Mithra. Amidst this impasse, a mysterious, ominous-looking man approached the group, surprised that Rollo wasn't dead yet. That malicious being complains that the guy ruined the job he was supposed to do. Nor then discovers he was involved in the process and assumes he was responsible for messing everything up, apologizing for it. The bizarre man doesn't even understand why the boy is apologizing because he couldn't care less about who messes up the jobs he needs to handle. In fact, now his business is only with Rollo, who is worth the effort of having under his control. Imagining that the guy isn't going to hand over the child, the mysterious man attacks from behind Nor, and moving at an incredible speed. However, the bearer of the Black Blade manages to defend himself with a parry just in time. Impatient, the enemy orders the child to be handed over. And Nor gets furious that the man doesn't even know her name. All that matters to him is the money a creature like her can fetch, or rather her carcass. The objective is to take Rollo and deliver her to the client. In this guy's mind, he's doing the demon folk a favor since this kind of race only lives to suffer and generally doesn't mind kicking the bucket. As he spoke, the mercenary attacked relentlessly until a parry from the Black Blade destroyed the opponent's weapon. Watching the fight closely, Lin can't even keep up with the brutal speed of the rivals, while Innes keeps the princess safe. Although he lost his main weapon, the mercenary pulls out 2 daggers to continue his offensive. Even though Nor is known for having an almost impenetrable defense, as his attacks were frustrated, the mercenary grew increasingly impatient and intensified the ferocity of his blows, aiming for the enemy's head. The last stab was so powerful that even defending with his usual technique, this time Nor almost lost his balance and fell, while Rollo couldn't withstand the pressure of the wind caused and hit the ground. After being dragged several meters by the impact, Nor lost much of his breath and started seeing the adversary as a serious threat, aware that a stab like that could be the end of him. Just like the Minotaur he fought, this is an evident case of a hit kill. One of the man's daggers breaks, so he simply draws another and continues the offensive. All Nor can do is defend against the attacks because the opponent's tremendous speed doesn't allow any kind of reaction. Moreover, he needs to protect Rollo, and if he gets injured in any way, he might indirectly put the child at risk. The intensity is so sinister that Lin doesn't even consider getting close to try to help, knowing this is a matter for the big leagues. Meanwhile, her bodyguard fulfills her role as sworn, protecting the princess with a magical shield at a safe distance without getting involved in the mess. After all, she knows that mercenary is none other than Deadman Zadu, an S-rank adventurer.
上の重さがある。パリ！まずい。なんで死んでないんだ。
凄まじい衝撃波。
A while ago, in a military meeting Eaton's arrive, a document of an unresolved case. The mission's target was to eliminate a man who was reportedly dead. However, the same document was still marked as in progress, as if it hadn't been resolved yet. Dandel, the Sovereign Shield, thinks the case should already be considered closed. Sig, the Sovereign Sword, mentions that it's about Deadman Zadu, whose name literally means dead man. After becoming S-rank at a young age, Zadu ended up becoming a target for other ranks. Hearing this, Gilbert would be happy to take down a guy like that, but his instructor suggests that the Sovereign Lance stay out of it. Without backing down, Gilbert comments that this guy is scaring even the strongest in the kingdom. Mian, the Sovereign Bosses, says Zadu is too strong for anyone, and it wouldn't be wise to send more people to die against him. Keru, the Sovereign of Shadows, agrees with this view because nothing good will come from a clash against that guy. But since young Gilbert was curious, Oaken tells that Deadman mastered the ancient art of dwarven alchemy as a child, and at 13, he earned the nickname Dragon Slayer. Realizing this, the Lancer notes that he wasn't the greatest prodigy of his generation. The mage continues the story, saying Zadu gained fame throughout his journey until he was considered the pinnacle of what an adventurer can become. Ian's questions at what point this individual became a target, and Sig explains that this guy doesn't always use his extraordinary abilities to rescue kittens stuck in trees. Annie's reads one of the records where Deadman was responsible for wiping out 36 members of a merchant family. The Sovereign of Salvation recalls that it was suggested by the Adventurers Guild that his license be revoked, but Karo points out that some useful deeds Zadu did for society end up dividing opinions about this. By the way, one day he neutralized a potential disaster with his own hands, according to San. Because this matter is too complicated, it always ends up being shelved. Sig laments that in the mind of that S-rank, the only thing that matters is seeking money above all else. For Deadman, morals, customs, and civilization mean nothing. The best example of this is described in the document Ainz holds Zadu annihilated an entire country. With all this in mind, the Divine Shield protects Lady Lindbergh with utmost caution while Nor struggles to keep his head attached to his body. On the day of the meeting, Sig recounted that Zadu killed the entire regional army along with its royal family. As the news spread worldwide, civilization came to understand that Deadman Zadu doesn't know the concept of good and evil. Keeping Lin in the rear, the vice captain of the warrior corps explains that this adventurer has already been challenged by half the world who sought the absurd bounty on his head. But this only resulted in a pile of bodies around Zadu, who saw the reward for his death multiply increasingly. To avoid more unnecessary deaths, Ianese revealed that the Adventurers Guild publicly announced Deadman's death in an attempt to bury the case, which is why he earned the nickname Deadman. Speaking of the devil, although Zadu was alive and well, his daggers couldn't say the same. As he drew his knives against his opponent, the giant sword with a peculiar shape managed to ruin his weapons. Nor apologized for breaking the entire S-rank collection but reminded Zadu that he was the one who attacked first. Puzzled by the man's way of speaking, Zadu didn't accept the stranger's apology, especially since his mithril knife was destroyed in this duel. But his Orichalcum and Dragonfang daggers should resist literally everything. Nor worried that the guy might want compensation, so the S-rank noticed just how odd this guy was, but even stranger was the sword he wielded. Reacting to this, Zadu threw his crucifix-shaped weapon into the air. Then the sword disassembled into dozens of similar blades, all pointing at Nor. According to Deadman, this technique was called Silver Cross. No matter how many swords Nor destroyed, the S-rank assured that he could make more. When the silver daggers were thrown at Nor, despite his rigorous training for moments like these, he knew he couldn't handle so many projectiles at once. Therefore, he was forced to use his own body to shield Rollo from being hit first and his back and then in his arm. The daggers pierced the adventurer, triggering Ein's alarm because at this rate the man wouldn't last long. Thus, the divine shield engaged in a mental struggle between helping Nor or staying within the shield to protect Lin closely until she turned to the princess and asked for permission to join the battle.
今日はおとなしくこっちでやるか。
ボンでも数十の鉄拳を瞬く間に数百の命を。
シルバークロス、こっちはいくら壊しても気にすんな。できるんだよな。パリ！
ノール先生！
パリ！
シルバークロスの量が多すぎる。
She then interfered with the advantage of the Silver Cross, using her magical shield to block every projectile launched at her and her allies. Having sworn to protect Lady Lindbergh, Ines knew that Nora's death could cost her life afterward and consequently the princess's as well. Using her divine shield not just for protection but also for offense, the officer prevented damage to her allies, but her offensive power wasn't enough to hit Zadu, who dodged the attacks with mastery. Thus, Ines asked Nor to take care of the offense while she focused on the group's protection. The man thought about what he could do to get through that swarm of swords and then saw the solution in the death Black Dragon's fangs. He enhanced his physique and asked the knight to open part of the shield, then threw the fangs toward the swords, destroying each one of them. With considerable ammunition left, Nor intended to maintain the strategy until he created an opening. But Zadu surprised him by attacking Ines from the flank. Nor managed to parry before the tragedy happened, breaking another blade of the opponent. This time, the dagger was made of adamantium, so the S rank simply swallowed hard, accepting that this guy was capable of destroying all his equipment. After accepting this, he didn't intend to lose his entire collection in a single fight, so he announced he would flee, even giving up on going to that celebration happening in the royal capital. Haynes asked what celebration it was, but he didn't know the details, only that it was going to be one of those extravagant parties. Having said that, he turned and bid farewell to the others, ironically. But Nor responded genuinely, not realizing it was a mockery. Then Zadu commented that this guy was, among all the strange people he had encountered in his life, the strangest of all. He then told Rollo he was lucky because he was going to make a lot of money off the demon folk. Speaking of which, Zadu itched not to attack again but couldn't resist and used a piece of adamantium for one last attempt. But he understood that Nor was a real wall in front of the child. Thus, Deadman disappeared in a dark smoke. After that, the group discussed the celebration the S-rank mentioned, and Lin confessed she was curious to know what it was. Therefore, they considered passing through the capital, which terrified Rollo because he heard that the most powerful creature of all was destined for that city, a monster capable of leaving the entire place in ruins. Hearing this, Lin was convinced that their destination should be there, surprising her bodyguard by revealing she already knew Ren's plans. She knew well how her brother thought. Ren wanted Anise to take the princess to Mithra if any threat arose, but the capital would be caught off guard if the group didn't arrive quickly to warn about the attack. In the end, Ines agreed but demanded that Lin not leave her side for even a second. As for Rollo, he decided to accompany the travelers, admiring the leadership and care he received from Nor. On their way, Lin reflected that she was afraid, but Nor's presence brought a sense of calm for everything the man had demonstrated up to that moment. Meanwhile, the adventurer showed wild horses to Rollo, proving that his skills were not just with the sword. This man, almost straight out of a hero's tale, was the one the princess needed to take to the capital, even if it cost her life, because it would certainly cost the entire kingdoms if she failed, so she asked Ines to pick up the pace. In the meantime, Darkin informed Ren that the population had been evacuated and that the 6 sovereigns had been assigned to thwart the enemy's ambush. The Secret Corps continued their search for the opponents, but nothing was found. With the facts on the table, Ren deduced that the enemy hoped to exhaust and separate Clay's forces with this hide and seek game while preparing their troops for a new wave of attacks, which could come from anywhere north or south by land or by air. Speaking of aerial attacks, Darkin emphasized that the hunters hadn't spotted the winged beast they were looking for, which increased Ren's tension even more. Speaking of which, the prince saw a strange magical mass forming in the sky, so he used a revelation spell that brought to light the worst imaginable enemy. Lord Darkin thought it was a black dragon, but Ren analyzed that it was much larger than that. In fact, it was a calamity dragon. Then, take the train to the capital. Nor felt something outside. When Rollo took a look, he spotted a calamity dragon soaring majestically above the city. The colossal creature terrified the entire population, who watched in disbelief at its indescribable size. Lord Ren wondered if the Empire realized the horror it had unleashed, while Darkin remarked that, according to records, this dragon should have been in its sleep period since it had only been resting for 150 years. Ren deduced that the beast was awakened specifically to attack the city, so he ordered his subordinate to evacuate everyone before the worst could happen. On top of the city wall, Mian followed the monster's flight alongside her archers, sensing someone using magic to seal off all evacuation routes, making it impossible for the 6 sovereigns to gather. Meanwhile, Sig was surrounded by skeletons, and Dundarg had a pack of fierce wolves circling him. Gilbert urged the king to flee, but His Majesty remained calm, instructing the captain to protect the population and ensure everyone's safety outside the capital. As for King Clays, he had his own task to accomplish. Analyzing the situation through his binoculars, Ians had no doubt that the capital would be entirely destroyed if this dragon wasn't stopped. Feeling a bad omen, Lady Lindbergh suspected that her father would use himself as a shield to save the population, even though she knew he was no match for an enemy of this caliber. Beside the princess, Nor didn't seem as tense as the others. In fact, he watched the winged beast as if on a safari, admiring the size of the creature since it was his first time seeing a dragon. Rollo quietly commented that the frog they encountered earlier was a dragon but decided to keep that to himself. Meanwhile, Nor asked Lin if her father and brother were still in the city. Sadly, she was sure they were, but it was too late to save them. However, Nor believed he could still make it in time. The girl looked at the distance between them and the walls and asked if she heard him right. Nor didn't lose his conviction, reminding Lin of what he did to that goblin. She recalled that she used the wind burst to propel him toward the giant, but this time the distance was much greater. Nonetheless, Nor intended to use his sword to absorb the impact of the fall. He felt indebted to the people of this city and to the king, so he would love to lend a hand. Besides, he thought solving this situation would be easy, and after everything she had experienced with this rank E adventurer, Lin didn't doubt anything anymore. Soon, she questioned why she was sitting there complaining when her sensei said there was still time to help. It was obvious that the wind burst wasn't designed to serve as a catapult, but the person requesting this intervention defied the usual logic, so there was no reason to hesitate.
きっと自ら盾になる道をですが、あんなものを相手にできるはずが。逃げてください、お父様。
国士竜も竜なんだけど。
走る竜ですか？
ああ、
ウィンドブラストのことですか？
この剣越しなら問題ない。さんにも世話になっているし、俺にもできるかもしれないからな。
Meanwhile, Clays recalled the moment when Darius claimed it would be easy to punish his insignificant kingdom with brute force. At that time, Clays assured him that he wouldn't hand over the Dungeon of Perdition to that man. Darius argued that an outdated civilization like Clays would only waste the dungeon's true potential while they could develop a military force capable of dominating the world with the resources found there. Clays responded that his kingdom chose not to wield a power beyond their control, but that was why Darius believed his rival would always rule a small nation, never possessing the ambition and capacity to be a great king. Now, the Calamity Dragon had just set foot on the capital's soil, leaving destruction in its wake. Clays now knew that Darius would go to any lengths to seize that dungeon. He had underestimated his opponent and was now paying a high price for it. As he climbed to the top of a tower, he was thrown into an old memory where Lin was playing with her father in that very spot. Even though the entire city was threatened with ruin, all that concerned the king was his daughter's safety, and this feeling pained him deeply. In fact, he agreed with Darius that he was not the type of man meant to wear a crown. Being honest with himself, Clays had always felt more at ease on the battlefield, so he apologized to all those who had to follow the orders of a foolish leader. Though it wouldn't absolve his sins, Clays was ready to die in exchange for one of the dragon's eyes. Far away, Anis invoked the divine shield and instructed Nor to stand in front of the formed cylinder. Once he was in position, Lin cast a series of spells that could protect against the attack and others that would necessarily increase the power of the impulse, albeit at some risk. Because of this, she apologized in advance if the guy's backside caught fire in the process. Nor threatened to reconsider his decision, but the girl cast the wind burst, launching him far into the distance.
ディバインシールド、この筒の先に立ってくれ。
マジックバリア、リフレクト、マジックリフレクト、
俺、
チャージ、バースト、
さっきが。
コンデンス。では行きます。ご容赦を。これが今の私、ウィンドブラスト。
At the same time, Clays found himself face to face with the Calamity Dragon, which opened its massive mouth, gathering energy. Ren realized that this was the ancient breath that incinerated the entire continent hundreds of years ago, leaving the entire population frozen in fear at the sight of this unstoppable power. Clays quickly understood that the enemy wouldn't give him any chance for a fair fight, but at the very least, he felt he must do something worthy of his crown before meeting his end. With this resolve, he unsheathed a small, shining blade of weapon that, as explained, was the explosive sword capable of draining all of the user's mana to deliver a single sacrificial strike. Without a hint of fear, the king raised his weapon, preparing for the final attack of his life. But just then, Nor arrived at the last moment, using his parry skill to turn the dragon's head to the side, preventing the breath from devastating the city and indirectly saving the king. The townsfolk watched the scene in disbelief as the dragon slowly fell to the ground. Once it rose again, the dragon, revealing a feminine voice, questioned why it was surrounded by an endless smoke. In the midst of this, she saw Nor and deduced that this small human was responsible for the intervention. Her eyes burned with rage, for in her mind, the strong must control the weak and crush them with violence. With her tail, the dragon demolished part of the wall and directed her aggression at the human, who parried the tail with the same skill as before. Once more, the creature crashed to the ground, and Nor admitted that he thought he was going to die there. A few minutes earlier, when he was thrown by the wind gust, the young man had tripped over a stone and started spinning through the air like a windmill. He used physical enchantment to regain his balance, standing before the massive wall. The adventurer leapt even higher, his body propelled closer and closer to the dragon. For a moment, he threatened to back down in the face of such a terrifying threat, but he shook his head to stay focused, and the rest is history. After knocking the beast down again, Nor scratched his head, surprised that the parry worked so well on such a large creature. This realization gave the man more confidence as he gripped his sword tighter, no longer seeing the dragon as a terrifying beast but rather believing he could defeat the enemy on his own. Meanwhile, Lin and Rollo arrived at the royal capital on horseback, trying to find the king and escape the city as quickly as possible. However, the group was struck by debris, causing them to fall from their horses. The damage could have been much worse, but Anise saved them all with her magical shield. Ahead of them, those responsible for hurling the debris emerged from the shadows, Emperor goblins marching toward the princess and the others. Lin reflected that these monsters were much smaller than the ones she fought with Nor in the forest. Still, they were powerful, so the girl tried to think like her master, searching for a solution to this conflict. She then asked Anise and Rollo not to be afraid, as they were merely facing goblins, which her squire agreed with. Considering Nor's opponent, the monster attacked, and Lin responded with the ice dance, but it had no effect as the goblins reached the shield. Rollo decided to act, taking control of the monsters and stopping their movements. Lin took advantage of this to invoke her Sidus magic, while Anise summoned her divine sword. With the goblins now completely frozen, the warrior struck them down with her sword, shattering them into icy fragments.
イネス、ただのゴブリンです。
確かに。
冷静に対処しましょう。アイスケルダンス。
ごめん。動かないで。
呼吸だ。
ディバインソード。
With the victory, Lin observed that not only did Anise deserve the title of Divine Shield, but her divine sword was also worthy of such honor. As for Rollo, the girl was amazed to see him control those enormous goblins with just a few words. The fact that this young demon folk was so powerful was mind-blowing. Either way, she imagined it must take great courage to use such a strong ability. Meanwhile, the dragon attacked the diminutive human in her path with increasing fury. Despite being a mere insect in comparison to this winged beast, Nor managed to dodge every blow with his parry skill, frustrating his opponent. Although she believed her claws and scales should be indestructible, she saw her body taking serious damage from the impact of that sword. Speaking of which, Nor also didn't understand how this strange weapon could remain unscathed even when used against such tough opponents. Regardless, he knew that the Black Blade was the key to victory. However, defeating the dragon wouldn't be easy, especially since she knew she was at a disadvantage on the ground. She took to the skies and began gathering her breath once more. When she had built up enough power, she unleashed it directly at the human who dared to challenge her, leaving Nor with no choice but to defend with the parry. He deflected the dragon's breath like a baseball, sending it straight into the atmosphere and causing a continental explosion in the sky. Faced with this, the dragon descended from the heavens and let out an ear-piercing roar. Rollo observed the scene and commented that it wasn't just rage that was consuming the creature, but also her wounded pride at seeing her opponent not even taking the challenge seriously. Similarly, Clays reflected that dragons are naturally egocentric, but an ancient dragon of this level is even more so, considering they're known as the most powerful creatures on Earth. Thus, when Nor attacked the enemy, he tore out one of her fangs, causing her to crash down. The red eye lost its vibrant color, calming the beast. Seeing the claw and the monster before him, Nor recalled the story his father told him as a child about the Dragon Slayer, but he didn't feel he fit that kind of character. This is the end of I Parry Everything Episode 8. Thank you so much for staying on this channel and watching our videos. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can keep you updated with our latest content. See you in the next video.